Hello. A vehicle that started as a humble Swedish design with a funny Swedish name is now posed to be one of, if not the, most widespread fighting vehicles in Europe. This is the Combat Vehicle 90, or CV90, a family of platforms that is slowly taking over the defense budgets of European governments, while fighting the fight in Ukraine. Today, I want to talk about it, what its specs are, why so many countries want it, and if it's the best thing Sweden's come up with outside of IKEA and ABBA. Swedish pun, the like and subscribe button, and let's talk about it. In early June of 2025, 6 European countries, Estonia, Finland, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Norway, and Sweden, all came together to talk about getting new CV90s, both in what they want in terms of future variants, and how many more of them they would want to buy. Older ones in the various fleets would be sent to Ukraine and be replaced with shiny new versions that don't smell like a combination of sweat, carcinogenic exhaust, and shit. Now there are a dozen, if not more, variants of the CV90 that have been fielded over the years. Some with big guns, some with medium guns, and some with chode-like guns that fire mortars named Mjolnir, which in my own headcanon I'm going to say is a reference to the Halo armor, not necessarily to Norse mythology. These were originally designed by the Swedish Defense Material Administration during the mid-80s and first entered service in 1994. The version you will find driving around in Sweden's military is the STRF 9040 series, which has been designed specifically for the Swedes themselves. These have 40mm Bofors L70 autocannons, hence the 40 at the end of 9040. If you're ever confused as to what kind of a weapon is on a specific CV90 variant, just look at the last two numbers and it'll tell you what caliber of cannon sitting on top. Originally, the Swedes tried out the M242 25mm Bushmaster, the same cannon that's on the Bradley, but eventually opted for the much larger 40mm round. A large portion of this was that older models didn't have any ATGMs like a Bradley or a Russian BMP would. Opting for a larger round helped cover some of that target gap. Additionally, in each Swedish mechanized unit, for every one CV90, you have a main battle tank as well, which theoretically means that anything that needs an anti-tank round to take out will be handled by an actual tank, or at the very least the dismounted infantry with their own AT weapon systems. That 40mm cannon can hit targets up to 2,500 meters reliably on the ground, and 4,000 meters in the air. The target being 4,000 meters in the air, not the cannon 4,000 meters off the ground. You get what I meant by that. Ballistically, those 40mm rounds can fly 12,500 meters, which is nearly 8 miles. So, even if you miss, you have a really cool opportunity to get a really nice long-distance point bonus if you're lucky. Newer versions have the option of firing spikes, an Israeli analog to the American Javelin that can be mounted on the side of the turret. Equally capable of taking out actual tanks, as they are static rusted-out tank hulls in slow-motion promotional videos. If you're more into escargot than you are hummus, French Acheron missiles are also an option. In case you were wondering, you had to already pre-order the CV90 Mark V in order to unlock this skin for your vehicle. Mounted along with the Bofors is the MG3 coaxial machine gun, firing the NATO standard 7.62 round at upwards of 1,300 rounds per minute. Fun fact, if you fire a full 1,300 rounds in 1 minute, take your CVC helmet off, and listen really closely, you'll hear your vehicle commander screaming at you before slamming your face into the side of the turret for melting the barrel. As much as I would like to fire 1,300 rounds of anything in 1 minute, I am unfortunately limited to 1 round every 4 seconds by Bubba's self-defense class and training. But if I ever had to use that training, I am glad to be covered by today's sponsor, the USCCA. The USCCA is a massive gun owners organization that gives you both the skills and know-how of how to protect yourself with a firearm. Signing up today gives you access to their vault of armed self-defense instruction, with special focus each month. Not only will you gain all the information you want, but you'll also gain the legal support that you need. Members of the USCCA gain access to self-defense liability insurance, making you mentally, physically, and just as importantly, legally prepared for anything. Even doing everything right can land you in some hot water and cost you thousands, if not tens of thousands out of pocket. But with the USCCA's network of legal representation and access to insurance coverage, you can sigh a breath of relief that you're covered. To learn more, follow the link that I have right here on the screen and that I have down pinned in the description. Thank you to the USCCA for sponsoring the channel, and now back to the video. Sweden designed their domestic CV90 to fill the traditional IFV role, specifically in the subarctic regions of Northern Europe, giving it exceptional mobility in snow and wet environments. Original versions carried 8 dudes in the back, but later ones carry 6, which also happens to be the standard squad size of the Swedes' mechanized infantry. Now, because Sweden is here, and Russia is here, and they only joined NATO in 2024, CV90s were designed to be as capable as possible at blocking, or at least delaying, invading Russian forces. Part of that is that most of them come equipped with mines, so that they can quickly deploy them before an oncoming assault, while still providing protected firepower to the poor guy you designated to be the mine digger person. CV90s are used a little differently, and by that I mean backwards, compared to, say, an American IFV. In American doctrine, you use dismounted infantry to achieve the primary objective, while the vehicle is there to support and protect them. In Sweden, the primary job of the infantry is to protect and defend the vehicle, while the vehicle itself is the one achieving the primary mission. That part was just a fun fact. I have no commentary on if that's the right answer or not. I'm just happy to be here. In June of 2023, Sweden delivered 50 of their own CV90-40Cs to Ukraine, where they saw extensive use in fighting in and around Bakhmut. According to Ukrainian crews, the 40mm cannon armed with armor-piercing ammunition was able to one-shot Russian vehicles like BMPs and MTLBs, while the high-explosive rounds tore through trench lines no problem. The versions received by Ukraine came equipped with the Barracuda camouflage system. These do have the benefit of just normal camo making it harder to see with the naked eye, but are specifically designed to lower a vehicle's thermal signature. This helps make it harder for Russian target acquisition. Helps being the key word here, because removing that thermal signature entirely is basically impossible if the vehicle's running. But the second it gives back to the crew could be the difference between getting exploded or getting the first shot off and not getting exploded. But if stealth is really your thing, there have been teasings of the CV90 Ghost that uses the adaptive camouflage panel system. This can do things like make thermal signatures almost disappear, or if you want to get really tricky and walk a fine line of committing a war crime, disguise itself as a non-military vehicle if you're looking at it under thermals. Now, the CV90 is probably better known for its export versions, which come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. There have been 4 upgrade iterations of the export model so far, those being the CV90 Mark 1, 2, 3, and 4, while the Mark 5 is currently in development. Norway was the first export buyer with the Mark 1, followed by Finland and then Switzerland. These were slightly lighter, which gave countries more options of making them heavier with their own add-ons later if they really wanted to, and had some differences in the targeting system. The biggest difference was in the choice of weaponry, with these being equipped with 30mm guns and the addition of ATGMs. Overall, the export models gave the CV90 a little bit more flexibility as opposed to the purpose-built one used by Sweden. Mark IIs were fairly close to the Mark Is, but with improved digitalization, vehicle monitoring software, and apparently made the owner's manual of these things more fun and interactive to use. I have it on solid evidence that the latest software patch apparently has brain rot shorts on one page and the technical information on the other. This might come as a shock to you, but the Mark II was then followed by the Mark III, which introduced a nice bump in firepower with the Bushmaster 3 35mm autocannon. These integrate network integration in the barrel in order to fire smart munitions, primarily airburst, aka counter-defilade munitions. The gunner designates where they want the munition to explode, and as the round is fired and traveling down the barrel, it's magnetically programmed with the firing solution before flying out the front, and then makes the trench that some dude was very proud of digging all by himself completely fucking useless. The specific rounds used with these are 3P rounds, or pre-fragmented programmable proximity fused warheads. When Sweden donated their batch of CV90s to Ukraine, they also included a good bunch of these rounds with them. The Bofors cannon welded in the turret was originally designed way back in the day as an anti-air gun, a role that is still played when the CV90 started rolling out of the factory. That fact, combined with the programmable frag rounds, make these ideal systems to defend against drones and other low-flying aircraft. Like a gay couple wearing a condom, both the top and bottom of the Mark III put on protection. The Mark III added extra armor against both mines and top attack munitions. This upgrade came before the age of nightmare drones and was more designed for things like missiles, but we do love some accidental forward thinking. Now, everything we've talked about so far has been a CV-90 in the IFV or Infantry Fighting Vehicle role, but that did not stop BAE Systems from upping the ante with a light tank version. And in response, the CV-90-105 and the CV-90-120 were born. The 105 version, as the name implies, has a 105mm rifled cannon with an optional auto loader or manual loader if you just decide to swing that way. These were designed to support infantry with more firepower in areas that tanks really couldn't get to or couldn't perform well. However, no one really bought them, which is why I have been talking to you for such an unusually long amount of time with this shot, because there is no footage of this thing outside of War Thunder. The CV-90-120, outside of sounding like a zip code, has also not been adopted, but there's more footage of it, so we're going to talk about it a little longer. Developed by BAE Systems, it has a full 120mm smoothbore cannon, not that different from most other main battle tanks, albeit on a significantly smaller and lighter chassis. The goal with this, like the 105, was to provide big guns that would be able to more easily move around and be transported on planes than your traditional main battle tank. The T version of this thing, that I'm tired of saying the name of because it has 5 numbers in it, making it this, you can read it yourself, was revealed in 2004, with an unmanned turret. That reduced the overall height significantly, because you didn't have to stick a couple dudes in it. That makes it a much smaller target, and made it easier to transport. That sounds great, but why has no one really adopted those yet? Well, Europe doesn't really need a lighter platform like that. Lighter vehicles are great. They get stuck in the ground less, they're generally easier to fix, cheaper, easier to transport, and put less strain on logistics. You can drive them over less reinforced bridges, and they're more maneuverable. That makes them ideal for things like mountain warfare and island hopping. The thing is though, Europe lacks islands to hop, and their infrastructure is pretty solid, even in the not-so-great parts. And if NATO is having to fight in the Swiss Alps, we've probably already lost the war by then. NATO countries tend to specialize in certain areas, rather than have one giant army for each country. Poland focuses on tanks, the Baltics in electronic warfare, and the Romanian army in grand theft. You know, that kind of thing. The country that would have the biggest appetite for a light tank type thing is France, because they tend to put mobility in their vehicles above everything else. The problem is that France, A, almost exclusively makes their own stuff when it comes to their army if they can get away with it, which leads to B, they already have a fleet of lighter mobile gun platforms. They don't need another. As cool as the 120mm version is, there's not really a market for it. And after the cancellation of the American Booker, we probably won't be seeing it anytime soon, if ever. But that is not stopping the traditional IFV version from making big waves in the European defense market. Right now, 10 countries have CV-90s in their inventory currently, or are waiting for future ones to be built for adoption. Italy and Latvia are currently testing them out, which would round the number out to a nice even dozen. In total, there are roughly 1,400 CV-90s driving around Europe, with several hundred on order being manufactured as we speak. That's nearly double the number of any other IFV in NATO, if you don't count the 4,500 or so Bradleys sitting in America's motor pools. But not only is it the most numerous, it's one of, if not the best, all things considered. Compared to Germany's Puma, it's slightly less advanced in terms of technology, and there's no debating that the barrel shroud on that thing is cool as hell. But they're less modular than the CV-90, the byproduct of Germans over-engineering everything, and with that, means they're also nearly twice the cost. A Mark IV CV-90 will run you about $9 million, but a Puma costs upwards of $17 million. An individual Puma might be better than an individual CV-90 in certain areas, but 2 CV-90s will beat a single Puma 100 times out of 100. But I also can't think of a scenario where those 2 vehicles are fighting each other, so moving on. Sweden's vehicle outclasses the UK's Warriors in basically every category, and Warriors are being replaced with Boxers. But those aren't quite the same thing, so I won't be comparing apples to similar but different enough apples in which a one-for-one comparison is feasible but misses the intent of the argument. Probably the biggest rival to the CV90, in the European market at least, is the General Dynamics Ajax, but these are more expensive, lack some of the modularity, and are slightly worse in harsh terrain. Now, it's all good and dandy to compare apples to slightly different colored apples on paper, but how is this thing actually performing in real life? Well, the 40mm ammo, as we've mentioned, has performed beautifully in Ukraine, and by that I mean has successfully used technology to make it easier to kill our fellow man. The only issue is that Sweden only sent a handful of them, making them high priority targets for Russia, meaning Ukraine's had to use them pretty sparingly. Out of touch hippie statements aside, the optics on this vehicle are leaps and bounds ahead of anything coming out of former Soviet factories. Most notably is the Janus spherical day-night sight, designed for medium and long-range engagements. This thing has built-in target tracking and classification, all built into a fancy network suite that makes actually operating the vehicle incredibly simple, all things considered. These have full 90-degree tilt, making them ideal for identifying and tracking drone targets. Then, if a gunner needs to take a drone out, all they have to do is switch the gun to air defense mode, ID the target, and let the fancy targeting computer do the rest. Development's being put into new designs for dedicated drone scanners that essentially act as visual radars, constantly scanning the sky for potential targets that a human operator would struggle to detect. That info can also be shared between platforms, so if one detects a drone and doesn't want to engage it for whatever reason, it can transmit the targeting info to another platform, and then that one can take it out. Add in the option for integrated active protection systems, and you have a relatively inexpensive, cutting-edge design made by a company that understands that not all military vehicles need to be painted tan. The CV90 is only getting more popular, and that tends to have a snowball effect in the military defense world, so it'll be interesting to see what other futuristic-looking vinyl wraps are next on the list for this Swedish product. I can only hope they release an anime waifu version soon. And on that note, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.